I've coached and worked with CRNAs, nurse practitioners, RNs, and what I will tell you is that there are entrepreneurs among all of them. And I personally feel that you don't need to be a doctor to have your own medical clinic. Hey guys, Dr. Adam Sewell here, and just wanted to make a training for you. Training is going to teach you everything you need to know about how to start a conversation with a medical director, where to find a medical director, how to talk to them, and then how to sign them. And so just to kind of review real quick, we're going to show you where exactly to find any potential medical directors, how to start communication with your medical director, what to say to a potential medical director, what to show your medical director, what they might want to see, or things that you should have prepared. And then finally, how to sign the medical director and so that you can get your own business started. Taking a step back real quick, if you don't already know, having a medical director is one of the easiest ways to basically get into the practice of medicine, essentially. One of the things, I'm a medical doctor. My wife is a CRNA. I've coached and worked with CRNAs, nurse practitioners, RNs. And what I will tell you is that there are entrepreneurs among all of them. And I personally feel that you don't need to be a doctor to have your own medical clinic. And in fact, what I see more and more is that RNs and nurse practitioners and PAs and all of these people who have trained and have, significant training are able to have their own medical clinic. In some states, they need to have a medical director. This isn't that hard of a thing to achieve. I think it's something that will allow you to have your own practice, your own business. And there's a lot of reasons to do this. And if you haven't checked out the reasons to do this, take a look at a video called Why You Should Escape Mainstream Medicine, because it explains exactly why you should have the power in your court and you should be in control of your own destiny and not reliant on a gigantic medical industry. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump in. Where do we find medical directors? Well, the easiest for most people is they're kind of the warm market people they know, people you may have worked with, etc., people that you know from the hospital, people that you know from training or whatever. Many times, literally just reaching out to them, you'll find some people. You can also have introductions from your warm market. This is something that a lot of people overlook, but it's very powerful. So a lot of times what I would tell, especially like RNs or nurse practitioners that are looking for a medical director to start, say, their own aesthetic business, I tell them, hey, when you go to ask somebody to be your medical director, don't just walk up and say, hey, can you be my medical director? Say, hey, do you know of anyone who would be interested in being a medical director? And that way you don't put a lot of pressure on the person you're talking to, but it also opens up the possibility that they may know someone else. For example, if someone came to me and said the same thing, I know several people that were very interested in being a medical director. They are currently medical directors, and they're happy to take on new people as a medical director. And so there are other physicians, other doctors, et cetera, that will also have the same connections. And then finally, you can go to what is considered a cold audience, which is people you don't know, you've never talked to them before. And this also works very well. We've had so many people find medical directors through a cold link or cold audience and be successful with it. So one of the things that you need to focus on first is to have the right mindset. When people sometimes go to find a medical director, they come off with a certain level of like desperation, like, oh, I need this. Can you please do this? That kind of thing. Or they're very timid or shy. And that's kind of the wrong thing to do. The first thing to realize is that there are a lot of doctors out there. Many of them would be happy to be your medical director. You may not know them yet. But there are many, many people out there. And so I just want to switch your mindset and make you realize like you are doing them a favor as well. And they're doing you a favor. And together you guys can build something absolutely beautiful. And so your job here is not to sell people on why they should be your medical director, but to sort those that are interested, to sort those that you can work with on a good level, because they also need to be people that, respect you and that you also respect too. You can kind of look at this like dating. You want to definitely like meet a lot of people, maybe date a lot of people before you find the one person to marry. The same kind of deal with the medical director. You definitely want to, have some options. So I wouldn't necessarily just jump to the first person that says yes. I think you should talk to a few people, see how it goes, and make sure this is somebody that you don't mind at the bare minimum talking to every month. Because in majority of states, not all states, but majority of states, there usually is some kind of recurring communication that happens. This should ideally be somebody who you're cool with talking to at least once a month. The thing is that you're looking for volume here. So you need to have a lot of people to reach out to during your search because from volume comes discernment. And so a lot of times that's why we focus. Their whole goal here is not to sell people. You hear is to sort. Are you right for me? Should be your main focus, not, oh, I need you to do this. And so if are you right for me? If you have that as the focus, then you'll find the right person for you. And then from the discernment comes excellence. And having the right medical director can make a difference in your practice. And also having a medical director that you are comfortable with, they understand what you're trying to do. They appreciate what you're trying to do. You guys are copacetic. You can talk about things. You have a great relationship. That is a huge advantage to you long term. And it's also very useful because, you may start at one place in your journey of building your own, medical practice. And you may find that, hey, I want to add on this service line, or I want to do this. And it can actually be a quite rewarding relationship for everybody involved as new channels and possibilities to treat patients open up. So let's talk quickly about your warm market or people you know. This is for people with very large social networks. You'll find that it's often very easy to find medical directors. In fact, I know probably a good number of people found their medical director just literally working at the hospital and just asking a few people there, like, hey, do you know anyone who'd be interested? Hey, I'm actually interested. I've never been a medical director, but I'd like to know more. They have things like that. So it's very easy if you have a warm market, if you know a lot of people, or if you work with a lot of people. What I would do is, if I were you, I'd start by approaching doctors that you're familiar with, and then you need to approach them using a system. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later in today's lecture, but it's best to have a little system or like a kind of predetermined thing to say versus like just trying to wing it. Both work, but I think what you'll find is that, just like with everything else, right? If you have a system in place, things are going to go much easier. And if a doctor you work with says no, ask them if they could be a reference for you. A lot of people are, in healthcare in general, a lot of people are very conservative. They're very risk adverse. And so sometimes they'll say no initially, and they say, hey, well, do you feel that you could be a reference for me if I found somebody else as medical director, just to kind of let them know how we work together. Do you feel like I'm a good provider, et cetera. And so even if they don't say yes to being a medical director, having them as a reference can be very excellent. And that way, when you do find somebody that's right for you, sometimes, it'd be nice to be able to say, hey, I have these 3 people as references. You can call them. They're all the doctors I've worked with. They all have good things to say. So let's talk about introductions from your warm market. So asking for introductions from your warm market is very effective. And a lot of people don't do it. Some people feel like it's a burden, but the reality is, just think about from yourself. If someone truly came up to you, another person who and they said, hey, I'm looking for X. Do you know anybody who does X? Most of the time, it's almost pleasurable to help people introduce them to things that they need, right? I think that it's very wise to ask for introductions. And the reality is that, if you ever did the 6 degrees of separation, or you looked at any of those kind of things that showed how much people are connected, it's really quite amazing how everyone is so connected. And so by just asking for introductions, you can expand your network so widely. It's often easier than asking for an introduction than even asking a person directly. And then a lot of times what I would recommend you say is, would you know someone who would be interested in being a medical director? That's the phrase you want to use. Would you know someone who would be interested in being a medical director? And that way they can say yes or no. But basically, either way, you'll end up finding out that many times, most people know someone or know of someone who's a medical director, or know someone who might be interested. I can give you an example. There was one of the people that we worked with and had trained with us, basically went to a doctor that they work with at the hospital. That doctor was not interested in being a medical director, mainly just because they were very unfamiliar with it. But they knew somebody who was a family practice doc who, had their own practice. And it turned out like after that person actually met this family practice doc, it was just like a perfect fit. They totally, got the same vibe. They have a great time. And it actually ended up being a benefit for both of them. And this person ended up actually renting space from that family practice doctor and actually worked in the office, having her own medical practice essentially in this guy's office, and basically being able to have the medical director on site, which is huge. You don't necessarily need that. In fact, the majority of medical directors are not on site, but it was just really beneficial for her because she was just getting started out. Let's talk about reaching out to cold audience or doctors you don't know. Now, a lot of people are very afraid of this, but it is not anything to be afraid of. There's nothing There's nothing that's going to go wrong by you asking someone if they know of anybody who'd be interested in being a medical director. There's nothing that no one's going to hurt you for it. And I say these things not to not to sound trite or anything like that, but a lot of people are so afraid to reach out to people they don't know. And in fact, just like if someone you didn't know reached out to you, wouldn't you help them? Right? I know I would. And so just having that ability to reach out to people and realize that people in general, most people are happy to help you. They actually want to help you. So one of the things you can do is send communication asking if they or someone they know would be interested in being a medical director. Definitely sending some information to them, and then setting up a time to speak over the phone, Zoom, in person, whatever works for you. But there's basically a pretty simple process, which is sending the communication, setting up a time, and having it flow with that. And the reason why we call it a two-step process is that many times when you first put someone on the spot, their default answer is, I don't know, I'm not sure, I don't know, just get away, right? Especially they may be busy, things going on. And so a lot of times if you come with a more open-ended questions like, would you or someone be interested in becoming a medical director? And then here's some information about what I'm trying to do. And we'll show you later, what to give them, etc. And then setting up a separate time to talk to them. Try not to put them on the spot then, but say, hey, would you mind if we talked about this? Could you talk about this Friday at 5 p.m.? Just over a phone call, it'll take 15 minutes. Just very, very simple things. Because what you'll find is if you don't put a lot of pressure initially, you'll find most people may have to research it. They may have to ask some friends. But the majority of people we see that become first-time medical directors, the reason why they do that is, one, they actually quite enjoy the process, and being a medical director is a new way for them to use their license that they've trained so hard for. But also, many times they want to check it out. They don't know enough. I kind of understand what a medical director does, but not 100%. And so that's the kind of the thing. So how do you find a list of doctors to reach out to? So one of the easiest ways you can do this, and this works in every state, by the way, and is probably probably a way that you might get some communication from people, is that every medical board, every nursing board, whatever, but for doctors, obviously medical board, they sell a list of doctors, sometimes called a roster. They often refer to it as a roster of physicians, etc. And you can simply go to the medical board. You may have to send an email asking them for this. Sometimes you can find it on the website. Most of the time it's kind of hidden somewhere in a couple different links. But basically, they usually sell, they all sell information regarding all the people that have medical licenses. It's actually quite standard, and they even offer information through other means as well. So the other thing you can do is, if you don't want to go straight to the state, I highly recommend you go straight to the state and get it. It's not very expensive. The fees are very small, and you get the entire database of every doctor in the entire state. And that will get in their address and everything. And that is pretty much all you need. But you can also, should you, for example, be, maybe you're in between 3 states and you don't want to have to buy all the states, you can also buy a list of physicians from third-party sources that collect these. Sometimes these third parties also have emails. Most of the medical boards that sell you the information of the doctor, they won't give you their email. It's kind of rare for that to happen. They usually will give you their name, like first name, license number, and their address. And that address could be their home address. Many times it is, because that's where they prefer to receive communication regarding their medical license. Sometimes it's their practice address. Either way, they receive mail there. And if the medical board has an address, chances are it works, because I know for myself, who I have multiple licenses in different states. A, they always are checking on us, making sure we're updating our address for communication. And B, we would definitely want to always keep that communication open, because you have to renew your medical license. And if you don't, then it expires, and it's a big pain to get it renewed after that. So most of the time that address is going to be good. You also can use a service by the American Board of Medical Directorship, which is a match service. Here's what it looks like here. This is the American Board of Medical Directorship. You go over here to just tools. You say, I need a medical director. And I think what they do is they will request your information. They'll try to match you with a medical director in your local area. And so that's something that's very easy to do. And obviously maybe the simplest thing to do. So understanding the mind of a medical director. So for a lot of people, they will approach a medical director, and sometimes they feel a little awkward, or like they're asking for someone to give them a big favor or something like that. But let's kind of talk about what is going on in the mind of the person you're going to talk to. So most doctors are interested in anything that can get them more time, because for most physicians, just like most practitioners in healthcare, you only have so much time. And with mainstream medicine, what is going on is you are getting a compression of your earnings, and you're working harder and harder and harder for less money, essentially, right? And this is most evident, especially with doctors. You can definitely see it in every field: RNs, nurse practitioners, PAs, everybody in medicine, even people that are not, traditional medical providers. Like people that work at the hospital, you can still see with them, you're having to work harder and harder and harder for less and less money. This is happening on all levels of mainstream medicine. Another reason why you should escape. But basically, if you can show them that they can earn more money in less time by being a medical director and helping you out, you're already halfway there. And for most people, that's a sufficient hook to talk to them. Most of the time, if you talk to a physician, you say, hey, look, are you interested in earning some more money with less time? This will take you, you'll be able to increase your income significantly, and you won't have to do any more additional work. The work's very simple. You're signing off some charts. That's it. The other issue is that they do face medical liability. So it's important to understand that they do have liability when they work with you. And that's why it's so important to make sure you have the right person, because having a good medical director who's able to do their part of the stuff is really critical. But, you are also asking them to basically use their medical license to build your practice. And while there are many, many people that do that, I mean, think about any of these chain companies that are out there. For example, Beverly Hills Rejuvenation Center, Ideal Image, any of these companies like that. There's so many of them. Even testosterone clinics, right? There's chain testosterone clinics all over the place, right? All of these clinics like that, DaVita Healthcare, which does dialysis, right? They all have medical directors. There are a ton of medical directors involved in that. One of the issues they do face is liability. And so it's important to understand that, their main fear is likely going to be liability, or, being afraid that something won't be in compliance and they'll get in trouble with the medical board or something like this. So this is kind of their main thing. Is that, number one, the hook is going to be, hey, you can earn extra money in less time. This is a great way to have some passive income for you. The things that their primary concern will be about liability. And then obviously they want to make sure that you're in compliance. And I'll show you how to demonstrate those things coming up. So basically, you want to try to present your offer in dollars per hour if possible. Even if you're not 100% sure, you can give like an estimate and say, well, I'm just starting out, but my goal is to I think that if you work with me, my estimation is, I think that you could get, this kind of thing. And the reason why is because if you're able to present in dollars per hour, it sounds so much better. And the reality is that for most medical directors, the amount of hours or time involved is very minimal. So, if you're somebody, for example, here in Texas, as a medical director, you have to sign roughly about 20% of the charts of each practice you medically direct, and you have to meet with the person once a month. So if you can kind of calculate how much time that would take, the reality is that could be about 2 hours a month, depending on how many patients you're seeing. So if you can say, hey, you're going to earn, $600 an hour, then, for most people, they'll say, wow, that's a great deal. It doesn't sound like it's too risky. It sounds like it's good. But understand that if you can show them the value, that's where you'll get them to be interested. So, for example, which one sounds better? $1,500 a month versus $300 an hour to review or sign charts. For somebody who's worried about liability in these things, the $300 an hour much sounds better. Most people, they'll understand that when you first start out, you're not going to pay them the same as once you are really busy and in practice. So for a lot of people, they say, oh, $1,500 a month for a medical director seems like really expensive. Yeah, if you're just starting out and you don't have any patients, it is expensive, 100%. But for most people that you talk to as medical directors, if you explain, hey, I'm starting this up, this is a brand new thing. I'm a medical entrepreneur. I'm building, this aesthetics practice. I'm going to be offering mobile Botox. I'm going to be offering whatever. They'll understand that, and many times they're more than happy to work with you on kind of a scale where it's like, hey, initially I'm not going to, may only have 10 patients, So, you'll have to sign 2 charts. Do you think that's something that could be doable? For most people, I think that you'll find that if you present it in the dollar per hour, it's going to sound much better. Just to give you an idea of the liability that the medical directors do face, here's the Texas Administrative Code. Obviously, this is different for each state, but here with the Texas Code, you'll see that medical directors are liable for all protocols and standing orders. And that's why when you show up, and if you work with us, if you train with us, we'll have all these protocols for you. That way you don't have to build them on your own. But basically, if anytime a medical spa or your practice is sued for anything, you're almost guaranteed the medical director will be sued as well. Now, the medical director is responsible for the state mandates, which are often listed as statutes, and that's what this picture here is. So you can see here's all the statutes that they have to comply with. So here's like physician responsibilities, etc. This is very important that they're compliant with that, and we can help guide you in those things as well. You can also see the medical director responsibility 5 pillars from the American Board of Medical Directorship handout. Let me see if we have that. So here's kind of American Board of Medical Directorship made this beautiful graphic here that kind of talks about what is required to basically be a medical director. One is to have the skill set, which is basically reviewing charts and understanding what you need to do as a medical director. Unfortunately, there are some people out there that don't know that. And so we do recommend that you consider having your medical director pursue training with the American Board of Medical Directorship. And most of the time, they're happy to do that because it opens up a whole another level of income opportunities for them. And for most medical directors, once they get one practice underneath them, they say, hey, I'm a medical director for practice X. Most of the time they realize like, hey, this is actually kind of fun. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy helping entrepreneurs. I enjoy seeing, this practice grow, and they end up taking multiple. So most medical directors are not just, they have multiple people they direct. 2, they define the medical consultation process. So it's really important that they have that definition. Like I said before, we like if you work with us, you do training with us, we provide all that for you. So it's not a big deal. Number 3, they implement staff training and documentation. This is stuff that you have to do anyway. If you run a medical clinic, obviously, if you have staff, like you're going to have to train them on HIPAA, the same stuff that you have to do at the hospital, right? Everybody has to do that. Like obviously, if you're using any kind of needle, which you probably are, you're going to have sharps training, right? You're going to have the basic stuff regarding that. We also have that as part of the medical director package as well. And then finally, deploy the protocols and standing orders, making sure that these protocols and standing orders are in place. That way you as the business owner can execute whatever you need to do to treat the patient. But they have to make sure that these orders are ready and they're signed by them, ready to go. And then finally, one process that most people forget is an ongoing quality assurance. Where, most states, they require some kind of measure of quality assurance to make sure the patients are happy. And this could be a patient satisfaction score. This could be, surveys of patients leaving. There's so many different ways to do this. It's very simple, and it would be something that you would ideally do for your business anyway, because, if you haven't already started to ask for reviews and these things from your patients, it's probably a good idea because, one of the things you can do is ask them, basically say, hey, how likely are you to recommend my practice to a friend? And then you can get a sense of, from 1 to 10, how likely they want to rate that, so if they're very strong that they would recommend this, then you can measure that. That's called the Net Promoter Score. Not to get too much into the weeds here, but there's certain things that we teach the medical director course and things that we teach in our trainings that can help you. But basically, you do need to have a process to make sure there's some form of quality assurance where you can say, hey, these people are being treated well. We're constantly monitoring the quality of the healthcare we deliver, and we haven't had any issues, et cetera. We've already talked about where to find potential medical directors. We'll talk about next how to start communication with them. After that, we're going to say what to say to the potential medical directors, and then what to show the potential medical directors, and then finally how to sign them. So we've already got number 1 done. We've got a few more left. So bear with us here. So how do you start communication with a potential medical director? We do have a letter that's already prepared for you to use. We recommend that you're very specific and clear in your communication. Remember, if just kind of like imagine if you get a voicemail message and, it's, hey, this is James, call me back. My number's on your phone. It's going to be hard for you to call that person back. You don't know. Maybe the number went through. Maybe you just got the voicemail, but you didn't get the caller ID. It's very, very tough to communicate to that person, right? So you always want to be very specific in your communication and say, hey, I am looking for a medical director. I am opening a practice in this area. I am doing mobile Botox in this area. I have an office here, whatever it is going to be. Be very specific of what you want, and then focus on what's in it for them. And I recommend you always keep this stuff concise and to the point. And what we see over and over is that having things short and sweet that does best, because people are busy, right? And if you send a long 3-page letter, they may not read all of it and they may not even understand what it's about. So having things, short and concise is always what wins. This is an initial letter to an unknown medical director. And basically just says, hi, doctor, last name. I'm writing this letter. I'm in the process of starting my medical aesthetics practice. I'm a, whatever your title is, who completed initial training at blank. I've been practicing for a blank number of years. And by practicing, I mean your total time that you've been in medicine. I'm currently opening up aesthetics practice and I'm seeking a medical director. All the needed paperwork and system for chart review has been prepared. Furthermore, all standing orders and protocols have been prepared for review. Based on my estimates, the position would generate approximately $250 an hour for these activities and could be scheduled during the most convenient time for the medical director. If you or someone you may know, remember that's that golden phrase, would be interested, please contact me back at this or at email. So very simple, straight to the point. I just find this to be the most effective way to do things. And you'll see that, it's pretty straightforward. So this is a letter you can use. We do have a template for you that you can download. So if you're watching this video, there'll be a link nearby or a button nearby that you can use to download that. And if not, just send us an email and we'll be happy to talk to you about it and send it to you. And you can use this letter as an email to potential medical directors. Many people have. You can also use it as just a standard letter, and that works just as fine. There are also people who have used it successfully as a LinkedIn message, by the way. LinkedIn is also a great source for medical directors because majority of physicians and professionals are usually listed in LinkedIn, and it's fairly easy to search. So now we're going to get to the what to say to the potential medical director next. And so how do we actually talk to them? So now we found the person, maybe we set up a meeting, they replied to our email or LinkedIn message, whatever. How do we actually talk to them? Well, number one is it's good to get to know them and ask them a little bit about their career as a physician. There's no mystery here, but people like to talk about themselves. And so the more that you can get to know them and about their career, it does two things. One is that it allows them to talk about themselves, going to make them feel a little bit more comfortable because they are talking about themselves, a subject they're obviously very familiar with. And then also you're learning a little bit about what they have done, experiences they have had. And also you're kind of trying to figure out, is this somebody that's right for you? If you ask them about their career as a physician and they talk about how they maybe had some issues or whatever, you may not want that person as a medical director. Maybe you do. It's up to you. I'm not here to judge, but there may be someone better for you or not, but getting to know them and understanding what they've done in their career and different things they've done. And what you also find is that in general, if you find people that are entrepreneurial, they're going to be more likely to say yes, by the way. So if they've also had their own practice, so they've also run a side hustle where they do X, Y, and Z, if they also, do this, you'll find that those people that are more entrepreneurial in general are just nicer to deal with. That's been my experience. Kind of start from there, get an idea of what stuff they've done, where they trained, what skill sets they learned, and then ask them if they've ever been a medical director before. Most people haven't, so it's not necessarily a big deal if they haven't. But definitely ask them if they ever have, and then explain your opportunity. And then once you do that, I think what you'll find is that most of the time, most medical directors are pretty amenable to the conversation. You always want to be specific in your communication. You always want to focus on what's in it for them during the time we talk. So I would almost recommend that you use the exact same points you use in your letter. This is what I'm doing. This is where I train. This is what I'm expecting your hourly thing to be. Over time, as we get more patients, you'll have, more hours that you can work, and it will help, increase your revenue. And then when in doubt, use the video. So we have a video for you as well that can explain the situation, and you can always use that. So there are a couple of things I just want to cover. What never to say to a potential medical director. Never say, I need to borrow your license. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who say this. And this is the scariest thing that you could ever say to any healthcare professional. Just imagine if someone came to you and said, hey, I need to borrow your license. Don't worry about it. Won't be a big deal, that kind of thing. The first thing you're thinking is, this is sketchy as hell, right? So no, don't ever say, I just need to borrow your license, because the reality is way more than that. And to have a medical director, you want to have a relationship, and this relationship needs to be defined. This relationship is going to be an important part of your business. The relationship is going to be an important part of your practice. This relationship is going to be an important part of the healthcare you deliver to patients. So don't say you don't need to borrow anything. And also, you don't have to do anything. This is another thing people say, oh, don't worry, you don't have to do anything. You just get paid money. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of everything. Most people see that, and the first thing that comes up is BS detector says, wait a minute, you're going to give me money for nothing, and I'm not going to even know about what's going on, but my license and my name are on these things. That's like a huge red flag. So they do have to do things. It's best to be upfront about what's expected. It's best to be upfront about what they need to do. You can always explain to them, like, hey, if you're really interested in being a medical director, you can take a look at what's required from the American Board of Medical Directorship. They have this beautiful 5 pillar diagram. You can show them that. And we also have a video for you to use as well. The other thing not to say is you'll just need to sign some stuff. Even though it's somewhat true that all they will probably be doing is sign some stuff, it is scary when you say that because you just need to sign some stuff. If someone maybe you didn't know that well was like, hey, do you mind just signing some stuff? It's just from the bank. Don't worry about it. It's no big deal. You probably would, have your red flag or your spidey senses or whatever you want to call them going up saying like, whoa, like let's double check this. This is kind of weird, And then unless your medical director is board certified, it is unlikely they understand what their responsibilities are. So there are people that are board certified medical directors from the board of medical directorship. And so most doctors you run into, they're not going to be board certified. They're not going to maybe have never been a medical director. So chances are they're not going to understand the responsibilities, which is not a problem. You just got to show them what's expected. And that allows you to grow with them, which is also, this is a relationship, so it's good if they grow with you and you grow with them. So that's excellent. Always ask open-ended questions. And so what I always recommend is try not to be too like, do you want this? Yes or no? Or this is some of this, you say, how do you feel about this opportunity to be my medical director? And most of the time when you ask these open-ended questions, it will allow them to communicate to you. And many times the stuff that they will say may even surprise you because you may think their main issue is about the money, or may think their main issue is about time or whatever, right? Or liability. But it may just be that, something else. Well, every other weekend I have to leave the state to go visit, family member X or whatever. And I was just worried about what happens when I'm out of the state or something like that. You never know. Another great one is there any area that needs clarification? Have you completed any training in aesthetics before? So if you're going to be having your medical director basically help you with your aesthetics practice, they do need to have some training for aesthetics. If you need them to get certified in aesthetics, we have a program for that. Not a problem. Just reach out to us. We'll help you out. But basically need to have completed some training in whatever they're medically directing. So for example, if you've never done Botox as a medical director and you are a medical director over a med spa, that would be a problem because you're technically directing something that you don't know and you have no documentation that you know this either. So it's really important that they have some kind of training in that. Most of the time, by the way, the medical directors, when you show them this opportunity, they many times will be happy to do additional training because they start to realize, hey, this is an opportunity. And as I get this training, I can become a board certified medical director and then end up directing multiple practices, et cetera. And that would also be good for them and for you. Another great question to ask is, what do you like about the opportunity? Help them focus on the positive that's out there. Say, what do you like about the opportunity? So here's an example of a medical director certificate from American Board of Medical Directorship here. And so this is somebody who obviously will be, whenever you do the training there, you get a certificate like that. If they don't have training, you could offer to make their first payment, instead of like basically, making a first payment to them, you could offer to basically pay for their training if you want to, as like, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to pay you the, whatever money per month, instead your first payment will go to cover your training as for a medical director. If you're part of any of our training programs, we give away a golden ticket, which basically allows you to get a huge discount with the American Board of Medical Directorship. So you can basically get training for little to nothing. You essentially have them train for free. And then just make sure you give it to the right person though, because you only get one. And then make sure they've signed up with you before you ever give them anything, right? So make sure if they're going to be a medical director, they can sign up, they can agree to do it. They still need to get training. That's totally fine. They can do the training after they sign up because most of the time you're going to be starting your practice anyway. So having them, sign up with you first before you ever give them the golden ticket and you can basically cover their training, or, if you're going to be paying for their training some other way, make sure, of course, that they are dedicated to you before you do that. The other thing that I would also recommend is that most of the time, if you explain this, what I've seen over and over, and for most people, usually the medical directors actually are happy to pay for their own training because it's something they start to realize like, oh, this is a whole new avenue. And I can, for example, here in Texas, you can have 7 nurse practitioners that are full-time. You can have 14 nurse practitioners that are part-time. You can have, I think, 20 RNs. So, there's just like, you can have very, very many people. And so it becomes a very valuable skill set for them. And of course, the more they learn about being a medical director, the better it is for you because you don't have to teach them as much, even though you have everything they need to do. It just makes your life a little easier as well. So what do we have left? We got what to show a potential medical director when you meet with them. So here's what you want to show them. Most of the time what they'll ask for a business plan. And we have a pre-made business plan done for you. It is top notch. We've even had people take this business plan to a bank, and the bank actually offered them financing for their business after they looked at the plan. So it is already done for you. It's like literally fill in the blank, so easy. So I want to make sure that you guys have that. And then, of course, I think you should show them your training, because one of the biggest fears that people have is, hey, this person's going to be working under my license. Do they actually know what they're doing? And so the more that you show them, like, hey, I did this training, I've done this and this and this. I'm in part of I've done training here in Dallas. I'm also part of the aesthetic inner circle, and I have continual support from multiple mentors who have practiced this for more than 15 years. I have immediate access to, I can make a post in the aesthetic inner circle and have an experienced aesthetic mentor reply back to me regarding a patient in 24 hours. I have all this stuff. I have all this backup plan. Like I have my bases covered. And if you can present that to them, it takes a huge pressure off of them, because that's kind of their main concern is like, hey, you are going to be using their license. They're going to be on your paperwork. And if you get sued, they get sued. So it is important that you understand that they understand your training and everything you've done. I also recommend, if you can, get the letters of recommendation from other doctors. I know we said before to ask them for recommendation. If you can get a letter, it makes it easier, because the reality is most people are not going to take the time to call, right? And so even if you just have a simple letter from these guys, even if you have to write the letter yourself and then show it to some, like maybe a colleague that you work with, say, hey, do you mind if I write a letter? I'll do all the work. You just feel free to edit it. If you have any changes, I'll type it up again. I just need you to sign a letter of recommendation for me. Most people that are physicians are happy to do this because they've had to go through the same process themselves. I can only tell you how many times I had to go ask for letters of recommendation from different faculty, people I worked with, people I trained with, people I did research with, so many times. So asking for letter of recommendation is very commonplace. And what I've found throughout the years of asking for these is that if you can do the writing of the letter yourself, I wouldn't make anything too grandiose. Don't, this is the best person I've ever seen in my life. Like nothing like that, right? But make a letter that's, formal and respectful and explains the stuff that maybe you've done with that person. And that would be in something that they might say about you. Most of the time, if you present them with that letter, they're happy to sign it. And once they sign it, you're good to go. You can give them a copy of it if you want to. Most of the time, they don't care to have a copy, but now you've got a letter of recommendation. And so when you sit down with your medical director, you got your business plan, you talk about your training, you talk about your support, and then now, bam, here's 3 letters of recommendation. So you can see that there's other doctors who are basically essentially giving you credibility. And then I think it's really important, once again, to talk about exactly what's required for them and for how much they're going to earn. And then a little bit about the insurance coverage. So for medical directors, there is liability insurance that they can have as well. And we recommend that you get that insurance coverage. Sometimes you may just tell them like, hey, here's an agent. If you need connections, reach out to us. We'll connect you to people that do this. But basically having insurance coverage, saying like, hey, there will be liability insurance. Sometimes you can cover that. Sometimes they'll cover it. It just depends on how you arrange it. Rarely, but sometimes there are people that already have that coverage enabled, but definitely check it out. They do need insurance. We've done all of these. And so now we talk about how to sign a potential medical director. So we have a medical director agreement for you. I'm not an attorney. This is a medical director agreement that I've used with other medical directors. Like even, some of my businesses we have need for medical directors as well. And so this is a medical director agreement that I've used. I can't say it's perfect for you. It's not, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to tell you that it's exactly right for your state, but this will at least give you a starting point. And if nothing else, at least you can get them to sign that. And then, then later, once you get rolling, take it to an attorney, make sure it's all good. If they need to modify something, they can. You're way more likely to get somebody to re-sign an agreement than to sign it the first time, right? Try to use plain English in the document. The more legal it is, the longer it is, the more complicated it looks, the more scary it is, right? This doesn't need to be anything complicated. It's better to get something signed and have it reviewed by the attorney, as I mentioned before, than to have nothing signed. And it's always better to get something done now than to say, oh, well, maybe next week I'll sign it, and maybe next month, and then that never happens. And then now do you have a medical director? Do you not? You have one. The guy said yes, but you didn't sign anything. So is it real? Is it not real? You don't want to get caught in that. Assuming everything is approved by the attorney and you're comfortable moving forward, here's exactly what you want to see. So here's the medical director agreement that we have for you to use. And so once again, if you need to reach out, please reach out. But this should be somewhere around this video so you can get it. And it's pretty straightforward. Each state is different. And remember, the laws in medicine change very, very frequently. So whenever you deal with attorneys, this is kind of like this FYI thing. Remember, it is better for you to have an agreement that's pre-made and saying, hey, I have this medical director agreement. Do you mind reviewing it? Because your cost for the attorney will be much less than, hey, can you provide me a medical director agreement from scratch? Because for the attorney, it's more work to go from scratch, right? So it's easier to say like, hey, I got this here. Can you just review it real quick? I don't think it'll take more than an hour of your time. Let me know if it does. And that will keep your legal costs low and then also get you whatever you need. But you'll see that this is a very basic medical agreement that allows, we've had multiple people use this without any issues. But once again, I'm not an attorney. I don't provide legal advice. But it's a great starting off point for agreement, and you can always amend it later. Like just because something changes, you can add an amendment to it, right? So you can have this agreement initially, get them to sign it, cool. Oh, by the way, apparently there's a new provision that just got passed, and we have to have this amendment. Do you mind signing for the amendment? You can add as many amendments to this as you want to, but get the thing signed, because once you're signed, you're good to go. And finally, last but not least, remember, done is better than perfect. For all of us in medicine, we are trained to be perfectionists, right? You are trained always to, get the highest score, get the A, get the 97, get the 99. Everything needs to be perfect, right? The reality is in the real world, the non-medical world, in the business world, done wins. Done is always better than perfect, because at least if you get it done, you can move forward. Many, many people, they get stuck in the element of perfectionism. They think about stuff, they're worried about this or that, and then they never get anything done, and then they don't have anything. Meanwhile, the person who just executed, they're already done, and they may have to make some adjustments here or there, but they're so far ahead, right? To the point that, by the way, the U.S. military did a study, and what they found was that if they had an enemy that was coming from an unknown direction, it is better for them to get their troops ready, get their troops out the door. Even if the troops are headed in the wrong direction, it is more efficient for them to do that than to wait until they identify exactly where the enemy is. Because many times the delay from getting everybody ready to get out the door is the main issue. So remember, done is better than perfect. It's better to make some imperfect action today. You can always repair things. You can always go forward with that. But do imperfect action today. Get stuff done now. Try not to fall into the trap of perfectionism. So I hope this helped you guys. If you have further questions, please reach out to us. We want to help you on your journey. We love medical entrepreneurs, and this is the time for us to rise. And remember, one vision, one purpose, freedom through prosperity.